Some people believe that CELTA is the end of a career. Actually, that's the beginning of another path, which is pondering on what we learned and trying to find solution for. And this is what we are going to talk about today. It's related to language versus skills-focused classes. Most teachers would take care more of language than skills. Some others would focus more on skills than language. However, dismantling this properly would help any teacher identify and understand where is the focus and how they should tailor their lesson plans. Well, as I said, this is first and most to increase learners' language grasping and to make them have a more informed lesson by tailoring it to their profiles. Embedded language is something inevitable into skills lessons. However, how much weight you should give a skills lesson compared to a language lesson when you're teaching one of both. So the main focus of every teacher is to pay attention to one component much more than the other. To differentiate between learners' focus needs any teacher to identify the SWOT. Funny enough, I use a business word into language teaching. Actually, SWOT is something generic that we can use in any of teaching. So identifying the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that are surrounding any student's profile will help any teacher know how much of each component they should give to the student. This profiling is based on different kinds of categories, mainly the psychological differences, study habits, personality differences, motivation, different purposes that they might have. These are the main and major ones identified after started teaching. And to be honest, this differs from a country to another, from a learner to another, and even from a learning habit to another. So believe in the failure of our way of teaching. This means that we did not profile the learners well. So it's a process that we have to start it very well to be able to teach and succeed in it. The end target, it has to be identified. The profile is the input. So when we know what's the output, which is the target, and the profile, which is the input, at that point we know how we can give this learner the maximum from whatever we can. The terms that we always use are here underneath: grammar, function, context, pronunciation, vocabulary. Now, if we would like to identify each one of them, we have to know ourselves. What do they mean for each learner? So this is the where is a structure is a continuous piece of speech. So this is something that has got an organization, a layout. So we have to identify how much this learner knows about that. The form is the grammar pattern that helps us to identify the tenses, means know how we can use them properly. The style is related to familiarity, formal styles and speeches either, or the written style also. The text is the variation person's use of language, and this is related to a context. However, the concept is the opposite way, which is independent from the context itself. Once we know each student how, or each learner, how they behave towards each component, at that was our focus. So we have two kinds, as we said. It's focus on language, where we have a presentation for it, which is related to grammar, vocabulary, and the functions in pronunciation, and we have a practice of it. A lot of teachers tend to have the time to identify the issue than to present it much more. However, after practicing and teaching for more than 14 years, I can tell you that this is the wrong way to do it. Standing up front and talking to students about something that they are not aware at all about is really the most unproductive thing you can do. What you have to do is go by the practice and move to presentation. So start by giving them a practice. Like this, you identify their weaknesses, their areas for improvement, their strengths, because they need to see it themselves. If the learner is not aware of his or her own um, weaknesses, you cannot make them aware of them, no matter how much you present of anything. The best way is doing the practice. So, reading, you should not tell them what's gist. Make them read and say, what's the general idea? The listening is the same thing. For writing, for instance, if you would like them to know if they know punctuation or not, give them a piece of writing. Ask them either to write or give them a piece of writing and ask them to correct. The speaking, if they are not doing it themselves, they will never know if they are saying the right things, the right tone, the right natural speed, etc., or not. So, generally speaking, making the practice first is always fruitful with students, especially if these ones are not aware of their own skills in that language. If ones, they have a G specific information, detailed understanding, and these are very generic. So when we are talking about the receptives, as I said, do practice, test your student first, and then identify where are the holes that you need to fill in. After that, give them another test after you fill in these holes. So each student actually, you have to behave towards them like a one-to-one. You don't need a pastoral, you don't need a tutorial every time, but what you need is make them feel they take the responsibility of their own learning. How would you do that? Is by giving them practice more. Give them that chance to show their capacity. They have potential, and sometimes we do think that we know the learner until they practice and we realize that we don't know them that much. The productive is the same thing. How would you know that they are fluent, coherent, and there is discourse in their writing if you're not giving them the practice from the first time? I remember the first time when I started teaching a group of students that they were categorized as a below A1 based on the CFR. When I asked them to write a piece of writing about their families, they said, "Teacher, we don't know anything." I said, "Well, you know exactly how you say father, mother, sister, brother. After you know that, you have to know what to write about each one of them, and then you start linking them." So I was not doing it for them, I was scaffolding it for each stage. So when they finish writing the sentences, we used to make and put the connectives, put the connective, then check the punctuation, is it the right grammar, until they reached the highest level where they became independent and even they used to score themselves. Peer correction is really the best way you can get the skill out of the student rather than getting them into working with the teacher and expecting the teacher to correct for. So overall, what we can that have the majority, it should be given to the skills. So 2/3 of your lesson should be for the skills and 1/3 or for language. And if you could really make the practice into your language first rather than going for a presentation, believe it or not, you will end up having the whole lesson as a skills lesson because they will start talking, they will start writing, they will start reading each other's sentences rather than reading you, talking to you, and writing whatever you're giving them as a sample. I hope this helped to make anybody understand that segmenting a lesson into what's language, what's a skill, makes you understand that the skills are the most important in any language to be taught or learned. So you can embed the language into the skills rather than doing it the other way around. Because we are not helping them, giving them more grammar and vocabulary while they don't know how even to express it in speaking or in a written piece. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope it was really useful for everybody. Have a nice day.